market feedback to you. And the last thing is, again, it's usually early stage technologists. We need to start to put a business team in place. So we'll work our network. We'll step in when we have to and fill those roles initially, and then go find, the head of sales, the CEO if we need it. How do you turn this from a very cool science project that could make a lot of money into a company?
Yeah, I'll just add that I certainly didn't appreciate this part of the job of venture capital before I started it. You are, as an investor, you are very much a part of the team of the companies you're investing in. And if an entrepreneur doesn't approach his or her investors as teammates, it creates potentially some tension, but also potentially a lot of missed value, right? Because to sit in a seat of a VC, it's actually it's a hard job to get into. I sort of lucked into it, and I realize now that it's sort of a hard seat to keep because we're measured on very objective performance from our limited partners, and that comes through performance in our portfolio. So it is part of our jobs to lean in and do it in a way that's helpful and hopefully not hurtful, but to have clarity early on with the founding team and their investors on how we're going to operate is valuable and sometimes a hard one to have.
All right, let's turn our attention to New Mexico. You've been investing here for 5 years, and I know you've been one of the foundational members of a couple of different groups. When you step back and look at New Mexico, if you were to say, hey, these are the things that we do well, or the strengths, the resources we have, and contrast it with these are the things that we need to do better on, right? That we need to build our capabilities, whatever it might be. What would those be? Yeah,
it's a great question. One I think a lot about as I think about, how do we make New Mexico more attractive for companies? And we've got a handful of companies in our portfolio who we're bringing here from out of state. And I think about some of the real strengths that most people in this room live and breathe every day. We've got an incredible amount of space, literally just like space to build stuff. That doesn't make it easy, but we do have a lot of room. And not being a very densely populated state, we find that it's very easy to make connections and introductions and fill a room full of decision makers in fairly short notice. The challenge of not being a very populous state is there aren't a lot of people to do stuff. So we lack capacity and bench strength to do hard stuff. So I think that's an area where I'm involved in a few things that are, we're trying to do some hard things, and I'll give one example later around biomass, but I think that we've got to build more coalitions because we don't have a lot of people, and I think that we have that potential, but it requires collaboration, which sounds pretty easy, but it turns out when you have 8 different stakeholders with 8 different agendas around a table, it's pretty hard to collaborate.
Anything to add, Lee? Or?
Yeah, I can't echo enough, I think, where Ward went, that you can get to almost anybody in this state if you even work a little hard at it. So that is a strength. There's so much talent if you go to Colorado or California, but good luck trying to get noticed or talk to anybody important in that. You just get lost in the mess. So I think that really is a strength. I think you do get to fly below the radar a little bit, especially if you're doing early stage. You can get things a little more mature, develop, before you sort of pop up on everyone's radar. I will say we were having this joke, I've been doing this long enough, I'm maybe a little bit jaded, but I think we have to be very honest about what we're good at and what we're not, and the things we don't have skills in, go look for that elsewhere. Go pull that in from other states, other locations, but be pretty honest in the assessment of what strengths you have and where we have gaps and weaknesses.
And maybe just a comment or two about tailwinds. So we have some really clear, unique tailwinds happening in New Mexico right now. We have a sovereign wealth fund that we talk a lot about, and we hear a lot about, and the reality is it's incredibly effective at beginning to turn this flywheel of early stage activity, which sort of flows into later stage activity, and companies coming to New Mexico as a result of that funding, or companies much more interested in coming to New Mexico because they have a capital base that, while not all of that capital has flowed to New Mexico specific firms, there's enough in sort of the community of venture. And by the way, it's almost $2 billion in 5 years. That's a lot of capital. And those companies have a reason to look to New Mexico. So we are seeing really exponentially greater amount of deal flow of companies outside of New Mexico wanting to at least consider setting up here, scaling here, building, R&D infrastructure and manufacturing here. And we've got some great examples of that too. So that's a massive tailwind.
I would also, just to build, because the tailwinds are very true, you also have a bit of a swing in what's in vogue. Looking back at things related to national security, looking at things related to hard tech, looking at things related to energy. There was a period where nobody wanted to touch any of that stuff, and now it's become interesting again, and we actually have a bunch of that here, so we need to capitalize on that.
Yeah, it's so interesting, the sort of pendulum swinging, and I feel that in my area of focus, which is energy and climate. We don't really say climate that much these days. That's okay. But the pendulum will swing back, and we have, I think one of the other tailwinds we have in the state is what I view and experience as a real alignment among policymakers, with Rob Black and the EDD, with MNERD, with the SIC and capital formation, with the universities. It just feels like and again, I only have a perspective of 5 years, but certainly feels like we're rowing in the same direction, and specifically focused on 3 areas of economic growth: aerospace and defense, energy, and advanced computing. So when you have that kind of focus and that kind of capital, I think good things can happen.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, what sectors, are there specific sectors and subsectors that you've seen here that get you really excited?
So we're hyper-focused on energy and climate. And within those two, I'd say over the past year, we've really kind of backed into a thesis around wood and biomass. And I honestly wouldn't have expected that to be on the drawing board. And in fact, it wasn't when we first started out our firm. But here's how it happened, which I think is a good example of this kind of the proximity to decision makers and influencers in New Mexico. So one of my mentors here, Dale Decker, who probably most people in this room know, introduced me to Laura McCarthy, the state forester, last summer. I had some questions around a company that we were investing in called Cambium Carbon, which basically builds an operating system for the wood industry. And I asked Laura, hey, what's happening in New Mexico around wood? And she sort of laughed and said, well, that's what I've been doing for the past 18 years, and we don't really have a wood infrastructure anymore. Like family logging companies and sawmills, they've just kind of fallen away. It's hard to find employees and the next generation who wants to take on those businesses. So long story short, she and I held a convening that Lee Rand came to, and we just pulled people around the table, investors, policymakers, entrepreneurs, landowners, and said, hey, here are 4 or 5 questions that if we could answer, we might be able to assemble this into a strategy for the state. And sure enough, we did that. And now we have a working group of about 20 people who meet on a monthly basis, again, representing all of those stakeholder groups, what I view as a real public-private partnership, which is really necessary to pull off something like this. And now we've got 4 or 5 companies that are circling who are in the biomass world. We've got just a lot of interesting stuff happening in that area, which I would not have expected we would have done anything in, investing-wise.
Right. And Lee, I know you, you invest all throughout the Rockies and even more broadly. When you're here in New Mexico, what sectors do you look at and get excited about?
Tell my phone to go away. It's a mix. So the energy space, storage is interesting. There's technology coming out of that. There's some interesting ones, computational and physical things coming together, whether that's, advanced robotics and how you're again, it's that intersection between the computation and the algorithms and the intelligence driving physical robotics, and then applications to specific spaces, whether that's, looking at a company that's inspection of oil tanks. So that area is interesting. Also seen some fascinating things that sort of touches, again, on the defense tech world around antennas, sensing. So it's a mix. I'm not sure I have any particular sector that's jumped out for me yet, but we have a lot across a pretty wide range here.
And I would just, a quick follow-up. I think it's really interesting to find the specific problems that we have in this state and try to back out investing opportunities and problem solving from a technology and business model innovation standpoint. So I mentioned biomass. I think there's going to be, over the next 10 years or so, great opportunity in critical minerals. Another huge tailwind business that this state has a history of not doing that industry very well. Massive understatement. So we believe that there are new approaches, new technologies, just new, more sort of open sourced thinking about those sorts of problems that could, I think, create quite an industry here for the modern era.
Yeah, I wanted to get back to one thing you had mentioned, and that is the emergence of these public-private partnerships. And, what's interesting is we've seen these models to varying degrees of effectiveness in other states. And some have been very effective, like the Arizona Commerce Authority, and some have not been that effective. And how's it working in New Mexico? Like, what's your take on that? And do you see they really are making a difference here?
Me? So, again, kind of limited experience on my part, but I mentioned the biomass strategy, which is a great reflection of what's possible. Let's hope it succeeds, and I think it'll succeed only as far as we're able to continue to keep the public and the private together. If we take a step back and look at what the state is doing in coordination, we're in conversation with Secretary Black's team all the time, and the New Mexico Partnership, Melinda Allen's group, the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, Jennifer Sensabaugh's group. These are incredibly important resources that the private industry is able to sort of pull them together and create these wonderful incentive packages. And that's what leads companies like Pacific Fusion to choose New Mexico over California or where else. And it is competitive out there. States are not just saying, no thanks to a Pacific Fusion. These are highly competitive processes. And the fact that New Mexico is starting to win these, I feel like every week I pick up the paper and there's some new company coming here. It's really, that is a great testament to how public and private partnerships can work.
Yeah, and I would also add to that, to the growing alignment that as you referred to earlier, right, on how it's almost like a industrial policy, right, that the state is aligned around in certain sectors and really marshaled its resources. Because before, as for those of us who've been here a while, there is an incredible field of silos, and now a lot of those are being broken down.
What do you attribute that to? How has that happened?
I think it's largely due to the State Investment Council deciding that they're going to, really think about picking winners, like winning sectors, and sectors that New Mexico has a chance to win at, and then having the capital put behind it. And then that, I think, and then I think Rob Black has done a really nice job of organizing the incentive packages, right, and putting those together, assembling those in a way that really makes it a comprehensive and a very attractive package for a Pacific Fusion or whoever. And we never really have seen that close alignment, right? We've seen other industries, like film, for example, was very robust. But they never really saw the financial backing that we see with the current policy.
I think that's true. Not to be the contrarian, but I like the direction, and we're seeing the traction. My appeal to the powers that be is, let's actually stick to a path and not change our mind next time we get a new set of leaders or whoever takes the reins in a year or two? Because that's what we've tended to do as a state, which is like, look, this is cool, let's do that. Oh, this is cool, let's do that. And this is a 15, 20, 30-year journey, so a little bit of consistency will help. I get myself in trouble all the time. I don't care. So.
Yeah. Well, we've got a couple more questions, and then we'll kind of open it up to the broader group. One is, we talked about the fact that New Mexico's got some great resources, but they're a limited number, right? There's only 2.2 million people in the state, and when you need, 300 engineers of a specific process, it's pretty hard to find 300 because there's probably not even that many in the whole state. And so recruiting, moving executive management or key skills from, wherever to New Mexico is going to be one of the challenges. I'm just wondering how the success that you've had with your portfolio companies and some of the challenges that you've run into in doing that.
I mean, it's very hard. And what you have to be careful of, I think, is you find a company, it's great technology, you start to build senior leadership, and very often you're recruiting outside the state, and you find somebody and they don't want to move. So that happens, and then they slowly start to pull everything out of the state to them. I don't think I have a wonderful answer other than maybe being willing to be a little more flexible about multiple locations. There's some things for businesses that really belong in this state and we can really excel at. There's other things that probably shouldn't be here. I probably want my sales and marketing team located near a major airport where they can get anywhere in the world quickly without an extra hop and 2 extra days. So fine, let's be honest about what belongs here and what doesn't, and then optimize to our strengths.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that we need to be very precise in what we aspire to be really good at, and not try to boil the ocean and just expect these companies to send their whole management teams here. And so we're seeing a handful of our companies looking to expand manufacturing. And we have one company, Dirt, that does large-scale industrial composting. And they actually are going to start manufacturing their own massive steel drums. And they're looking at New Mexico to set up their manufacturing. But they don't need their sales team here. They need their sales team in major metropolitan areas. But I do think the talent thing, as I've sort of sat with this question the most, is the most challenging. And the reason why it's so challenging is it's a multi-generational thing. And whereas the SIC has the luxury of being able to turn the spigot on, and it is on right now. You can't just turn the spigot on talent development and expect these companies to be able to fill out their managerial ranks from top to bottom. So we have to do a lot of thoughtful things in planning to make sure we stay a couple steps ahead of that.
All right. One more question, then we'll open it up. And this is, let me just lay out a scenario that we've all seen, and that is you're at a conference like this, and we are up here talking about how the SIC has poured billions of dollars into funds who are looking for deals in New Mexico. So how do you, Ward, if an entrepreneur walks up to you and says, Ward, I can't get funding for my company. I don't know. I've been reading about this. How does that work, right? What's your response?
I have maybe a little bit of a jaded is too strong a word. I've only been doing this for 5 years, but I've seen this over and over again. It's just frustration among entrepreneurs not being able to raise capital. And my view is this is a marketplace, and capital will find its way to good ideas. And if you're in New Mexico now, there's more capital than ever. And if you can position your business, and in fact, if you have the kind of business which is venture backable, which is a very different business than a non-venture backable business. And non-venture backable businesses are the backbone of this country. Laundromats and grocery stores, and those are great businesses. But a venture backable business is a very different kind of business with different components and expectations. So to sort of sum it up, my view is that if you're not attracting investment, then you don't have a venture backable business. You've got to retool it and talk to people who are in the business to help you sort of think through, how do I make this a venture scalable business?
All right. Lee, anything to add? Or?
I think that's fair. I think, one, know who you're approaching. I mean, VCs usually have very specific things they look for, sector, stage. So, don't shotgun and hope somebody thinks it's interesting. You need to be a little more intentional than that. And I would really echo, I mean, if, it sounds horrible, but if you're having trouble attracting money, then it may not be a company that should get money. So you should be your own harshest critic before you show up in front of a VC. I've helped a bunch of businesses, I've started businesses, and I'll spend days attacking everything I'm going to say from 6 different angles. And honestly, it's easy now because I feed it to Claude and say, tell me everything that's wrong with my deck. How will somebody attack this? How will somebody say it's wrong? Why are my metrics wrong? Just rip your stuff apart so by the time you end up in front of somebody pitching, you can answer every question and you actually believe all the answers. It's not just trying to convince somebody. You need to believe this stuff, and it needs to be real because your business depends on it.
Yeah, and I would say to that end, figuring out who, how do you actually present to people and take friendly fire? In other words,
or not friendly fire if it's me, but.
Yeah, how do you get constructive feedback? How do you have people help you understand where maybe the holes are, or the jumps in logic or whatever, so that when you get in front of the investors that really count, right? You're going to be prepared, and you're going to be able to field those, and that's going to add so much credibility to you personally, but also to the company.
I would also just quickly to add, most of the companies that I get excited about, it's somebody that is solving a problem that they lived. So if you spend 20 years at the lab trying to put a particular implementation together, and you came up with an answer and you started a business around it, you're incredibly credible. The ones that I struggle with is, somebody decided this was a hot space and assembled a team and sort of has some anecdotal evidence about why they're solving a good problem. If you didn't live the pain, I'm not sure you're very good at starting a company to solve it.
Yeah, so I cannot overemphasize the founder problem fit conversations that we have internally. And I think it's probably worth in this audience to just talk for a second about the challenges of being a founder. Building a business is incredibly hard. And if you don't come from a business commercial background, the stakes are even higher. So scientists and engineers out of the labs, professors and academics out of universities, the bar is just that much higher. So I always encourage non-business people to partner early with a commercial co-founder, because I see this over and over and over again, where the smartest person in the room is unquestionably the technologist. But that becomes a bit of a burden because the importance of commercialization and sales gets underweighted tremendously. And it turns out that's probably, at the end of the day, the most important part of your business, is to get that product market fit, go-to-market strategy right.
Yeah, well said. All right, you've heard us talk enough. Yeah, go ahead.
Hey guys, great panel. Thank you for the informative discussion. Can you share some exciting projects or companies in your portfolios you're really excited about, to give some flavor of what you're going after and investing in?
Sure.
You could repeat the question.
Yeah. So thank you, David Perez, New Mexico Innovation Hub, which, by the way, I could not be more excited about what David is building for New Mexico and in my neck of the woods in Santa Fe specifically. I think it's going to be a real catalyst for this ecosystem. And the question is just, do you have some examples of things you're working on or businesses that you're especially excited about? I'm going to mention one that is actually not an investment of ours, but I'm very excited about a young guy who's part of my talent lab. Solomon Gabara is a senior at UNM, and he is ideating on a business called Talent Sync, which gets right at this talent development challenge we have. And he's thinking super long term and building a platform for students in New Mexico and employers to find themselves in the form of internships and paid internships. And that's part of the sort of value chain of talent development that we need to think through all the way back to the earliest instance of how do students find paid internships. And you have all these companies coming to New Mexico now. And so Solomon's like, wow, I think there's an opportunity here to create that connection. And there could be a business there as well too. So I'm super excited about a young, talented entrepreneur like that finding something to do here and not be on the first train out to Silicon Valley.
Right.
I'll hit it quickly, and it's not even necessarily here, but just to give you a sense of what we look at. So one company we just closed an investment in, and two we're looking at. The one we just closed is looking at, trust me, we can go on this one for hours, quantum vacuum and essentially pulling energy out, Casimir effects, free energy that comes out of nowhere. People have known about this for a very, very long time, never been able to get it to work. It looks like they may have technology that'll make it work. Ask me in 18 months if we flushed a bunch of money down a hole or not. So that's way out on the extremes. We've got another company that actually I met here. If you look at everything from tanks to fighters to cell towers, they keep putting up new antennas for all the different frequencies. They've got a way to cover a very wide spectrum in a very efficient way out of a single antenna. Bunch of Notre Dame grads that came and started doing some work here. We're still looking at that one, and then just telling Word, we got one where we can pull essentially diesel fuel that's spilled all over the ground out of dirt. So it's some interesting technology, and the economics look stunning, but we're in diligence on that one. So you get a sense. It's physical, early stage, hard problems.
Can I mention one more?
Yeah.
I see James Zoller out there, and I saw James, and I was reminded of a company that we invested in that James knows. It's called Inventwood. And this is a great example of a company that we are bringing to New Mexico that can help solve a very specific problem in New Mexico. So remember I talked about the biomass issue. And what we're trying to do in the biomass economy here is build this ecosystem that will help us mitigate wildfire risks, create healthier forests, build rural economic development, and build healthy companies, both venture scale and mom and pop. So James and I were talking a few weeks ago, and I said, James, you're not going to believe this cool company we invested in. They make a product called Superwood. And Superwood is this mass timber product that can be pulled from 16 or 17 different types of woody feedstock. And they run it through a process, and it spits out this beautiful piece of wood that's 10 times stronger than steel, half the weight. Termites hate it, and it's Class A fire rated. And you can imagine in 5, 10, 15 years, when this is in production scale, it's actually starting to be that way now, but we'll have skyscrapers made out of this stuff. And there are other products in the mass timber economy that are coming along too, but if we bring one of their factories here, which we're trying to do, they can be a huge demand pull for a lot of this small diameter woody feedstock that's choking the forests because there's no cost-effective way to harvest that. But if you've got a manufacturing operation like that that wants it, then it becomes sort of a win-win.
Economical. Yeah. Oh, please, go ahead.
So I have a solution for the talent pool. One is over here at CNM does internships. The internships are funded by CNM, so you could have, I have 2 students right now working for me, and I only have to kick in a very small amount. They also have a quantum computation lab over there, which those people are going to be 100% hired. The other thing is that because of the federal situation, there are thousands of STEM-opt foreign students who are willing to come to New Mexico because they either have a job in 60 days or they're out of the country. I have 3 of them right now, 1 in Boston and 2 in Virginia. So this is kind of the Dunkirk moment for New Mexico. If we want to bring people into the state We can do it now. I don't know how long that's going to happen, but these people are anxious about their stay in the U.S. They're willing to come. They're educated in the best universities. We don't have to depend on just local talent. I have people from Boston University, work for Amazon Robotics. And so there's a chance right now if we pull together and do this. And what I'm focused on is making New Mexico an AI sub-hub to Silicon Valley. It only requires intellectual capital, doesn't require any physical investment, and we can bring those people here today.
Yeah, thank you. That's great to know. I appreciate that.
So thank you for a great discussion. But my question has to deal with a topic that wasn't mentioned at all, and that is the healthcare sector. And I noticed you all totally ignored that, and it's 20% of our economy. We have an aging population, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just curious your rationale and thinking behind that.
I mean, I didn't talk about any examples because among the partners, it's not an area I focus on. We actually have done a fair amount if it looks at, medical technology in that area. If you're talking about, health infrastructure, hospitals, yeah, that's probably not generally a VC investment. But yeah, if you're looking at innovation, we've done a fair amount. Just I always overlook it because it's not my sector, but we have done things there.
I think it's an incredible sector, and Katie back here at Tramway is one of the top healthcare investors in the state. So it's definitely on the radar, but like Lee, my specific focus doesn't touch healthcare.
And within Sun Mountain, we have done, I bet a 30% of our portfolio is healthcare. And I do a fair amount in that sector, so I can speak to it. And I think what we see coming out of UNM and out of the hospital system here is just every year an increase in the number and quality of proposals, right, for new company launches and new technologies. So we're very excited. I know Katie is seeing a lot of deals. Like, and Katie, maybe you want to stand up and address that. But we have seen a lot of deals that have been very, very exciting.
Yeah, no, we are. Yeah, so we invest in early stage med tech, biotech, and health tech, and we are seeing an uptick of deal flow. So I think it's a very promising area, and also a lot of the technology that you all touched on, its big strength of New Mexico is technology, right? So a lot of the deep tech, a lot of the frontier tech, all of that, a lot of it being developed at the labs at UNM. A lot of that will apply to different health tech, med tech, and biotech problems. So it's a convergence of technologies that we see a lot of great entrepreneurs. I have a question for you all.
By the way, thank you for raising that topic. It was not meant to be an oversight. So thank you.
You've addressed a lot of it, but I just wanted to ask what you think we need to do or change in New Mexico over the next 5 years to be nationally recognized as a hub of startups.
Sell stuff for a lot of money. I mean, I'm not being flip. At the end of the day, that's probably the biggest knock we get is, great, you started a whole bunch of companies. Show me one that IPO'd and was really successful. Show me one that somebody bought. If we can get even 2 or 3 of those, life will get better. It'll help.
Yeah, it's show, don't tell. And we've got some great examples that are happening. Pacific Fusion, Stellantis. There was another defense manufacturer mentioned in the newspaper today. Innovation Hub happening, Quantum Hub happening. These things, I think, in the aggregate, just continue to push the economy forward. But we just got to show that we can do it.
Yeah, I agree with all that.
And I'm really tired of hearing this. We'll Paul Allen and Bill Gates came here and 30, 40, 50 years ago and left. All right, that's fine. But let's build our own, successes like that.
So, any more questions? If not, I think we got, what, about another 15 minutes? Is that right? No? All right.
There's one, Patricia.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, Patricia.
Hi. So maybe a comment that you guys could expand on. So you guys are all pre-inflection point residents of New Mexico. You've worked in the ecosystem as we're at an inflection point, and I come from a aerospace background, so we say tailwinds and blue skies. We've got both, but we also have a backward view of things that we've talked about here, silos, people leaving, workforce gaps. And I guess I just would invite you guys to continue this conversation, and maybe you have some comments to add, that we don't recirculate former mistakes. And I concur, Lee, the change in direction and administration is probably one of our biggest risks. So what can we do as citizens, and from your perspective, how can we help you as you lead us forward in this inflection change?
I love that question, and I think so much of it, to me, speaks to the culture that I have experienced in New Mexico of maybe there's a little fear of thinking big, fear of outsized success. I don't know. It's hard for me to put my finger on it. I'm not from here, so I'm not so qualified to put a label on it. But my experience has been that we don't think big enough. We don't think we're capable maybe of doing something with outsized returns or things that can really change. And that's why I'm here. I came here accidentally because of COVID. My wife's family was here, and I was only going to be here for 1 year. And here I am almost 6 years later, and could not be more excited to be here. And I just think that we've got to, and by the way, I feel like I have been accepted into a community and had no reason to be. I don't have a 12-generation family in New Mexico, but I think that I'm seeing more and more an openness and a willingness to accept new ideas and accept things that might not have been thought of here or conceived here, but that's part of changing the culture.
I mean, I would say it's a bit of a theme maybe that you're getting from me, but be mercilessly data-driven. And by that I mean, let's take a look at what we have, what are the gaps. And I don't mean that sometimes people, I think, have a tendency in this state to use data to rip apart why we won't do something. Don't do that. Use it to figure out what we have and how we solve a problem. But at the same time, let's be intellectually honest about it. Over 15 years, the number I've heard, times I've heard, and I won't name anything, so I won't pick on anyone in particular, but we're going to be the best in fill in the blank. And I'm like, great, why? And they're like, because we will be. I'm like, yeah, I don't care. That tells me nothing. So find the areas where we actually have data to back up what we're good at, find the gaps, and go solve it. And let's pick, to your point, 1 or 2 of those. We're a 2.7 million person state. We can't have a list of 15 because they'll all fail. Let's pick a few, let's solve them, and let's go from there.
And when I got here, I looked at the then current EDD strategic plan, and there were 12 focus areas, right? And that's a recipe for nothing happening. And to their credit, and to other actors' credit, that's now really 3, with kind of 4 and 5 close behind. And that's just smart to me.
Yeah. I would also, oh, please go ahead.
You're talking about early stage. One of the things I hear from entrepreneurs is it's hard to get the next stage. They can get the early stage, it looks good, but how is it, do they have to go out of state to get it back? Or what do you think about how to attract that next level?
And just so everyone could hear the question, it was this whole idea. It's easy. You can, let me see if I get this right. You can get early stage money, but then where do you get the next one? Do you go out of the state? How do you attract it? What do you have to do to get from great, I built the basic thing, where do I go now?
Yeah.
Well, the institutional capital, the venture capital world, it is a step function world. It is very formulaic. And there's some art to it, but really when you boil it down, if you achieve certain milestones along the way, if you believe what I said earlier about there being plenty of capital, if you keep doing that, it's really just architecting what milestones are going to be attractive to the next round of capital and reverse engineer those into your KPIs and business. And so, for example, the hard one is typically seed to Series A, where you've kind of found some product market fit, but how do you scale that into a much larger community of customers? And there's a little bit of faith there if you have some data that there's product market fit and some paying customers, but you think you can expand that to 1,000 paying customers with an army of salespeople. So you've got to be able to sort of knit that together with data and some belief, some faith that it's going to happen.
I think it's showing the proof points. I mean, we'll touch on whether in or out of the state. That doesn't matter. It's showing the proof points that you've been able to do something with the money you had before that gives me some indication that you're going to be able to do what you say you will with the money I'm about to give you. And I know that sounds obvious, but the number of companies that come in and you look, I built this great product. And I'm like, okay, what customers do you have engaged? I don't mean they're buying in volume. They've taken one, they've played with it, they've given you a pilot. Oh no, I need money to do that. When you give me the next round, I can go run advertising. And I'm like, yeah, forget it. It's have you been able to be really scrappy and use your money to get, I think you touched on it. It's not, honestly, I'm an engineer by background. When I started as a VC, the first thing I dig into was 6 days of technical diligence. I almost don't even care now. It's like, okay, let's just assume all your stuff works. Who have you gotten to say they want it? What will they pay you for it? How are you different than your competition? And if you can prove that you figured that out with a little bit of money, you'll get some more to take the next step. But if you need that money to prove any of that, forget it. No one's going to give you any.
And here's a little, it's not a secret, but it's sort of a weird feature of venture. There's this thing called the power law. And if you look at a portfolio of, say, 10 investments that a fund will make, only 1 or 2 will be outlier venture scale successes. The rest will be zombies or failures. And it's really important for an entrepreneur to understand the dynamics of venture as they have these conversations with investors, because our livelihoods depend on being able to diversify a portfolio, but each one of those companies has to at least have the possibility of being a venture scale return company, because you don't know which one it's going to be. That's the weird thing. I sit around and look at this portfolio and think, when I first made that investment, I was just so positive. I would have bet the house that was going to make it. It's gone. It's over. It's belly up a year later. And the ones that you had the most concerns about are just crushing it. So it's so much of it's luck, but you try to, play that a bit by having a diverse portfolio and knowing that the power law is at play.
Yeah. So we have just another couple minutes, and what I'd like to do is end today's session by, asking Warden Lee if you could summarize the New Mexico venture capital ecosystem, right? If you could just look at it and in one word summarize it, what would that word be, and why?
What did Claude tell you?
Yeah.
Should I start the Jeopardy clock now?
I know, exactly. It told me underestimate. I don't know, but I don't agree with that one, so I'm ignoring that one. I don't think it's totally what you're looking for, but it's more what I would posit to the New Mexico ecosystem, which is go prove it. Go prove it to me. I think that's where we are now, personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I think proof. We were at the point we have all this great stuff happening. We tell a big story about the sovereign wealth we have, the beginnings of the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and we've got to really show, not tell. And I think it's starting to happen, right? I think there's some companies that are coming here and building big businesses, but I think we need a lot more of that. And I'm personally very excited about it and have a lot of confidence that's going to happen, but we need more of those proof points.
Yeah, and I, most people here are probably not aware of this, but an investment that Lee and I made 15 years ago, which at one point was really, I was struggling mightily, turned around and actually in June of last year IPO'd on the NASDAQ, right? And you don't really read about those stories or hear about them, but to your point, we see them slowly starting to happen. Now we need more and we need bigger, so. All right, I think that's it for the panel. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. And for the panelists, round of applause.
Okay, we have a networking break before our final panel, and we will reconvene at 1:45 for a national security, aerospace, and AI panel.